because it was the closest hospital. So I thought that was the one to go to. I mean, I was in respiratory distress, so I wanted a quick action. Turns out that was a mistake. If you have your choice, I highly recommend Methodist West. And here's why, okay? The first time I went to Katie Herman Memorial, they missed it. They missed what was actually wrong with me. And that was partly due to the emergency responders. I relayed what was I was feeling to them, and then they relayed what was happening to the doctors. Now, you thought it would be a clue that they had to be hooked up to a ton of oxygen and they had to give me a bunch of drugs in the ambulance before they even shipped me to the hospital. But it turns out this second session where I had the same thing happen, respiratory distress, I couldn't breathe. It felt like something was sitting on my chest. I couldn't get a breath. I was actually gasping for air. So the second time they sent me there, it got a little better, but basically what happened was the first time they missed it. The end result was they didn't realize I'd had a mini stroke. They didn't take the respiratory distress into account. What they thought it was my clonidine. And for those of you that have high blood pressure, you'll probably recognize that word. It's a drug that they use for high blood pressure patients. And I have suffered from very high blood pressure for most of my life. And mostly the doctors just threw more medicine at it. The latest being clonidine, metoprolol, nifedipine, losartan. Any of those sound familiar? So, net result was they got me better after pumping me full of drugs, got me breathing again. They said it was the clonidine that was making my blood pressure cycle too much. So when I get out of the hospital, I went on the clonidine patch. Well, it turned out it wasn't really the clonidine or any of my other high blood pressure medicine. It turned out I was having a lot of fluid buildup inside me that I couldn't relieve, and so it was causing pressure on my heart, pressure on my lungs, and I couldn't breathe. So, the second time I went in for the same problem, respiratory distress, Katie Herman Memorial, they wanted to ship me downtown for open heart surgery. Yeah, no second opinion or anything, and no working with me. Matter of fact, it gets a little scary at this point because the two doctors in particular, a doctor 150 shades of gray, that's what I like to call him, and a Dr. Bing, who both resorted to freaking psychological warfare, threats, and belligerence to try to get what they wanted, which was me going downtown for open heart surgery. They didn't want me to get a second opinion. They didn't want me leaving the hospital. They just wanted me to submit to what they wanted. I'm sorry, at the time, I had responsibilities. Okay, maybe it seems a little weird if I'm on death's door that I think about other things, but I did. We had a winter storm bearing down. I wasn't at home. My family relies on me for several things. One, I'm the only driver in the family, so therefore I do all the grocery shopping. I'm also the technical person in the family, which means if there was any problem with the outside generator, I was the best one to direct how to try to fix it and get it online. But these doctors did not want to work with me. They didn't want me to be released. They resorted to threats. I said, okay, to Dr. Bing, actually, he's the one I found out for as he read up on my last time I was admitted there. And by the way, both doctors, Dr. 150 Shades of Gray and Dr. Bing, both admitted that the hospital missed what was wrong with me the first time around. It turns out my heart is really blocked up, all my arteries, whatever. So I need a total bypass. But the neat thing is, hey, I didn't die like they said. That was part of their psychological warfare. I said, I'll just get a lift and go home. And Dr. Bing flat out said, you'll be dead before you get out of the car. Wow. Okay. All right, dude. Same with Dr. Gray. You know, he's saying, you go home, you die. I take you off oxygen, you die. Well, I'm not on oxygen. I'm home sitting in my recliner. And this was last month that I got out of Katie Herman Memorial. And yet, hey, docs, I'm still alive. But I will give a shout out to the nurses there who were wonderful. Brianna, Wilhelmina, Jasmine. I'm sorry if I forget anyone. Oh, yeah, Mr. Ramses. I even remember you, King of Egypt. So, I mean, I want to give a shout out to the nurses. They are a total night and day compared to the doctors who just want to inflict their will upon you. I don't know what the hell these guys get. Do they get a fellowship? Do they get a bonus for shipping me off for this operation? But I mean, seriously, they're just flat out telling me you're gonna die if you go home. Well, I ended up checking out AMA against medical advice, and then what I did was I went to see other doctors. I went to my mom's cardiologist, a Dr. Pi, very nice gentleman, very caring, and listened to me. I went to my primary care physician. I mean, yes, they did. After looking at the hospital records, they both were very, you need to get to the damn hospital and get this taken care of. You're like, okay, I get it. I'm in serious state here. I got a lot of blockage. I can feel it. I've suffered many strokes, it turns out, which, like I said, Katie Herman Memorial missed it, as well as missing the fact that my heart was blocked up the first time. They just thought it was the clonidine. It wasn't until the second time around that they wanted to ship me downtown, which would have made it very difficult for my family to visit me and me for to eventually get home. They did not want to work with me at all as far as getting out and being home for a little while and getting a second opinion to all this. So, the net result is now that I've gone to Methodist, I have a cardiac surgeon that's got me lined up for the end of the month. I'm sorry, yeah, this is of February 3rd today. So, in theory, now, according to my cardiac surgeon, since I suffered a mini stroke while being at Methodist, she wants to wait for me, for my body to recuperate and send me home with a ton of drugs. And the plan is at the end of the month, I will be checking back in to the hospital for this surgery. So, okay, now it's a month later, and if I make it to the end of February and get the surgery, that just makes Dr. 150 Shades of Grey and Dr. Bing look like total jackasses in my book, especially considering what they resorted to and how belligerent they got. I mean, seriously, how dare you question me? And let me tell you about Dr. 150 Shades of Grey. I bet the hospital won't let him wear a white robe and sandals because this guy's like shaping himself into the second coming of Jesus. Yeah, they're both medieval charlatans in my mind. So, okay. So that's where we are now. Today's February 3rd. I finally got the last of my medications that were prescribed by Methodist Hospital that are supposed to keep me alive until the end of the month. What I'll be doing, I'll be first checking you a neurological doctor, then my cardiac doctor, and they'll be planning out the surgery to get me better. Now, they seem to think I have a good chance of living through this, so, we'll see. This will be a journal. So if eventually the journal just cuts short, well, you know what happened. Kidding. So, anyways, but seriously, I just wanted to share my experience with you. I mean, I don't think it's fair that doctors should resort to psychological warfare. I mean, it's obviously okay. I kept saying I didn't want the operation, but it's obvious that you have to check out AMA to actually refuse a procedure. Because up until the last minute, they were still trying to ship me downtown to have open heart surgery. Well, the net result was after I checked out AMA, the next day I was able to drive to the store and stock up the house on groceries for my family. And I lived, you know. Granted, I did end up having another spell, but this time instead of going to Katie Herman Memorial, I went to Methodist because that's where my cardiac surgeon is and my cardiologist. And it turns out even my primary care physician is there. So, a lot better choice. I feel like I'm in a lot better hands. The only thing I'm not real thrilled about is the whole cocktail of drugs I have to take morning, noon, and night. I mean, seriously, I'll have to take a picture of it to show you. I don't even know how many it is. It's just bottles scattered out on the table, and I have this sheet that I have to go through to look, say, okay, morning, midday, evening, bedtime, what drugs to take, and how many. So, anyways, well, so this is the start of my journey, and as you can tell, the slurring comes and goes, especially when my tongue gets dry. So, more to come. I'll see you all tomorrow. Take care.